Lloyd Jones, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you.
So, since you've written your extraordinary memoir, which takes the Christchurch earthquake as the starting point for an exploration of your family's own kind of internal tremors, you've suffered an earthquake in your hometown of Wellington. What was that like?
Terrifying. I was in a picture theatre actually at the time, watching the Queen, Helen Mirren playing the Queen at the National Theatre in the play The Audience, and it was 10 minutes from the end, and the whole place began to shake. And I mean, over the years you get a sense of how big a quake is, and this was vastly bigger than anything I'd ever experienced. And we were 10 minutes from the end, and after it passed, just sort of sat there in a stupefied state, really. And when we went outside, or left the cinema, everybody was in a euphoric mood. Glasses were being clinked, and the street outside was filled with people on their phones and so forth. There was a real sense that we'd come through something.
Do you think that if it were not for the circumstances of the Christchurch earthquake, that you would not have been thinking about writing a memoir at all? I mean, is there really a kind of synergy there?
There is. I'm quite certain that had the earthquake not happened, and had I not made a point of travelling down there through that autumn, winter and summer, and walked across this broken landscape and encountered a language that directed me back to considering my family and its broken links, there's no way I would have begun this book or started this inquiry.
Can you talk about the quality of silence in your house that you were aware of as a child?
I don't think it's a conspiracy of silence. It's more ignorance. So it's an ancestral silence. So there's no talk of relatives or grandparents. Absolutely none whatsoever. There are no photographs of my parents as children. And then there is just silence within the house in terms of an atmosphere. And it wasn't a talkative house. It was, conversation didn't range back and forth over the dinner table. Particularly my mother was always aware of any loaded comment that the world was getting at her or something like this. So, and then there was a more general atmosphere of silence, almost a cultural fit to this suburb that I grew up in. No sort of sense of what had preceded it. No sense of the ecology that sat behind this new suburb that had been buried to make way for this new suburb. So silence is in all number of ways, forms, yeah.
You go to Wales, and I love the fact that you don't make that much of an effort as a detective to find things. You let things come to you. You let things reveal themselves to you in a rather sort of desultory fashion. But you do recognise little bits of your own DNA in the way people that you see look. They've got one feature that you recognise as being the family nose. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, well, it's when the landscape talks back to you in an unexpected way. It just sort of catches you when you're not expecting it, and it could be just a face filled with gloom standing on a railway train platform, and it'll have an echoing sense of recognition from me. I'll think I know that feeling, that look. Actually, in the case of Wales, it always seemed to be gloom, and a kind of it's not quite there, which I also know, a vacancy.
As Christchurch goes about rebuilding, how do you go about rebuilding?
Well, the assumption is that there's something broken in me, and there isn't. But I would say I have a stronger sense of the bits and pieces that make up me. A stronger idea of the mould from which I was cast. Yeah, let's put it that way. And that is a nice feeling on balance.
One of the things, obviously, that underpins silence generally in families where they don't speak about relatives is shame. and there is shame in this book. Do you think that our parents are the last generation that will have to experience shame?
Quite possibly, because that's when shame still meant something. In America today, it's part of a public performance, so they can, redeem themselves publicly. It's a ghastly thing to behold. Yes, and you're quite absolutely right. Shame is the big subject here in terms of my family, and it doesn't really matter what the reason is, because the reason is kind of silly, really. This whole thing about being illegitimate, the bastard child, and all that kind of thing. It hardly washes today. It seems kind of odd today, but shame is real enough, and when it starts to shape a personality. And when that personality, in the form of a mother, rubs off on the children, then you've got a fault line, and running across several generations. And yes, I can see behaviours to do with confidence and all that kind of thing that is connected to an event long before I was born. That's fascinating.